Any esports team eventually ends up in a situation where it has to make a roster change. A player might lose motivation, run into issues with teammates, or simply decide to join another lineup. Roster changes usually happen only as a last resort, when every other way to fix the problem has already failed. Sometimes fans even roast their team for not updating the lineup for too long. But it's easy to see where the orgs are coming from. Any transfer is a big risk, and management will avoid it as much as they can. But sometimes there are roster moves that leave the whole community in shock. Discussions go on for months, and some teams can't handle the pressure and fall apart. Today, we're talking about those cases. Don't forget to like and subscribe because you're watching CYBERSHOKE, and today we're breaking down the 10 most explosive transfers in the history of CSGO and CS2. Want to play with friends in private lobbies? Check out custom matches on CYBERSHOKE. You can spin up your own server, pick any competitive map, switch game modes, set your own rules, and even choose where the server is hosted. There's fun modifiers too. Randomized models, bunny hop, and parachutes. Setup couldn't be easier. Just create a lobby, drop the link to your friends, and you're good to go. Matches start instantly. More details are down in the description. Hey guys, you're watching the first episode of our new experimental format. Here we'll cover 10 interesting esports stories in a single video. The idea being that we don't dive too deep, just light and straightforward. We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments once you're done watching, and please enjoy. Even though Titan stepped away from esports a long time ago, pretty much everyone watching still remembers the org. Yep, the very same team whose stickers now cost a ridiculous amount of money. But back in 2013, this team wasn't known for insanely expensive stickers, it was known for something else. Titan were one of the strongest CSGO teams at the time, featuring the world's best aimer, Scream.
He's got a safe pickup on that one, so can he do this for the French side of Titan? Oh my god! What? Scream goes huge!
It's fair to say that Scream at that time held a status comparable to what Donk has in Team Spirit today. Adil was their key player and most valuable media asset. It was clear to everyone that if the organization were to part ways with him, it would only happen for a significant fee. However, in September 2014, the entire scene was blown away by the news of Adil's removal from the roster. If you look at the reason Titan decided to remove Adil from the roster, it sounds quite strange by today's standards. The thing is, 11 years ago, transfer decisions were made by the players themselves. Because of that, people were often kicked not based on skills or results, but on whether they managed to get along with their teammates. This was especially noticeable on the French scene. There were plenty of talented players, but half of them didn't want to play together because of past disagreements and grudges. Adil ended up in exactly the same situation. His teammates were simply upset with him for putting his personal highlights above the team's results. To them, it sometimes felt as if Scream was willing to lose a match just to pull off a clean ace with all headshots. When a patch came out at the end of 2013 that essentially nerfed Scream's playstyle, his teammates expected him to adjust and start spraying more often, but that never happened. Adil kept playing for headshots, and at one point the rest of the team realized they could no longer put up with it. To fans who didn't know what was going on inside the team, the situation did look strange. For some weird reason, Titan got rid of their main star, and it was just as confusing as if Spirit were to kick Donk today. The next transfer we want to talk about also happened in France. Few people remember this player today, but back then he sparked an entire meme that damaged the reputation of a major Tier 1 team. Meet EnVyUs. Exactly 10 years ago, this French team was the strongest lineup in the world. In August 2015, they took second place at the major in Germany, and by November, they had claimed first place at the one in Cluj-Napoca. No one argued that they were the strongest team in the world, but just a couple of months after their major win, something strange happened. EnVyUs, almost overnight, started playing much worse, and their decline worried everyone. Most likely, the team was simply tired, and nowadays an experienced organization would probably have sent the entire roster on a short vacation. But back then, transfer decisions were still made by the players themselves, who, as you can imagine, were in a state of panic over the poor results. The team wanted to find a target to blame. They needed someone they could point to and say the problems were all his fault. And in the end, they found exactly what they were looking for. The rifler kioShiMa was kicked. His stats had particularly suffered during the team's drop in form. kioShiMa was furious at his teammate's decision. He posted a long message saying that EnVyUs' decline wasn't his fault, but the result of communication problems. According to him, the French players had stopped respecting each other and working as a single unit, which inevitably led to their downfall. Fabian's kick was discussed in the community for a long time because he had beautifully proven his former team wrong. EnVyUs signed an unknown player, Devil, in his place and dropped to a Tier 2 level, while kioShiMa, on the other hand, joined FaZe and achieved solid success with them. At that time, the French player started using The Problem as his nickname. It was his way of reminding former teammates that they had been wrong to blame him. The community picked up on the joke, and every time EnVyUs posted an embarrassing result, people would spam their socials with "Kio was the problem." And now we come to probably the most talked about transfer in the history of the CIS region in CSGO. Back in the day, they were one of the best teams in the world. They reached the major finals twice in a row and consistently placed highly at S-tier tournaments. NAVI was always just a step away from claiming the title, and fans slowly started getting tired of their favorite team frequently finishing in second place. At that time, the players agreed that no matter what, they would become world champions without any roster moves, just hard work on the way to their goal. However, in the summer of 2016, one of NAVI's players, Zeus, was shocked when a friend texted him to ask if it was true that he was being kicked from the team. Imagine how rough that must have felt. Teslenko had been NAVI's captain for almost 6 years, yet he learned about his own removal not from his teammates, but from a random friend. It later emerged that NAVI had held a meeting behind Zeus's back to discuss whether he should be removed. Edward was the only one against it, while the other 3 voted in favor. The main criticism of Danilo was his stats. Zeus hadn't been at the top of the rankings for a while, but that year, his performance had dropped significantly. NAVI players felt that Danilo had started focusing on personal projects, which meant he practiced less and had become a burden for the team. The community was shocked by the news. He was considered the team's leader, and no one could believe that the players, along with the coach StarX, had dared to kick him. This story has a lot of twists and turns, but we can't cover them all in today's format. For example, NAVI wanted to make StarX the IGL, but Valve removed that possibility just 2 weeks after the roster change. It's also important to understand that at the time of the kick, Zeus really did look weak compared to other Tier 1 IGLs. Either way, time put everything into perspective. NAVI ended up in the worst position of their CSGO history, not knowing who to choose as the new IGL. Zeus, on the other hand, made an impressive comeback and won the major with Gambit. Lincoln's departure from Luminosity is considered one of the weirdest roster moves in CSGO history. Take a look yourself. The biggest esports sensation of 2015 and 2016 was this particular Brazilian roster. The global audience wasn't familiar with these players, and only the veterans who had followed tournaments back in CS 1.6 might have remembered Fallen's name. However, the Brazilians, much like today's Mongols, were so hungry for victories that they managed to reach Tier 1 in record time. Just think about it. In the summer of 2014, the community was fundraising so these guys could attend a tournament, and by the spring of 2016, they had become world champions and reached the top spot in HLTV rankings. Our hero FNX was showing a very solid level of CS. By the end of 2016, he ranked 19th in the world's top players. No one expected the Brazilian roster to make a change, but in February 2017, the community was shaken by the news of his departure. Many insiders confirmed that the reason for the decision wasn't Lincoln's performance or teamwork, but something else entirely. The problem was that he got involved romantically with a teammate's girlfriend. That's when he was kicked. Not as a player, but as a person. It's hard to imagine how many trophies he missed out on just because of the scandal he got caught up in. Moving on to another story from the CIS region, this time the main figure is Gambit's coach, kane. In 2016, Kane received an offer he couldn't refuse. His friend Danilo Zeus invited Misha to coach Gambit, the team he was joining as IGL, and naturally our hero agreed. With Zeus and Kane on board, Gambit's results skyrocketed. The team finally started winning tournaments and moved up from Tier 2 to Tier 1. However, in reality, things weren't as smooth as they seemed from the outside. All Gambit players, except Zeus, didn't understand what value Kane was bringing to the team. His individual performance was very poor, and he didn't contribute any meaningful ideas during the team meetings. So after the very first tournament, one of the players told Kane, "Honestly, I don't know how we're going to work together." But the fans didn't know these details. The public saw Gambit as a team that, with the arrival of Zeus and Kane, was achieving heights they had never dreamed of before. Then, in the summer of 2017, a historic event took place. Gambit became the first team from the CIS region to win a major. So just imagine how shocked Gambit fans were when, immediately after the major, the organization announced it was parting ways with Zeus and Kane. It turned out that the players had said that they no longer wanted to work with Mikhailo under any circumstances, and that their decision had been made even before the major victory. When Danilo threatened to leave the roster if they parted with Kane, his teammates replied that they didn't want it to come to that, but their stance on Kane was firm. Zeus tried to convince the players to keep Kane on the team in any role. For example, he could have become an analyst or assistant coach working only with Danilo, helping him individually as IGL. But unfortunately, the players just weren't satisfied with that option either. So in August 2017, the two of them left the team. Kane was officially kicked, and Zeus went alongside him as a friend. The community believes that this kick is one of the worst transfer decisions in CSGO history. Without Zeus and Kane, Gambit couldn't even stay at Tier 2 level, and only managed to return to top-level CS after the success of their academy team. The sixth story in our video is a very messy one from FaZe. It happened in December 2018, and to truly understand what went down, you need a bit of background. karrigan first signed with FaZe Clan in October 2016, and now we'll briefly go over what the team was like back then. If we allow a little exaggeration here, at that time, FaZe was basically a roster of rejects. It mostly consisted of experienced European players who had been kicked from their previous teams, rather than rising superstars. And karrigan was no exception. He joined FaZe not by choice, but because Astralis no longer trusted him as their IGL. However, over time, FaZe stopped being a mix of unwanted players, and stars like Nico and Olafmeister joined the roster, and while the team used to be a regular Tier 2 squad, they now consistently ranked in the top 5. Niko Kovac had high ambitions. He wanted FaZe to be the best team with the best players. No compromises, no exceptions. In his perception, karrigan didn't meet those standards. Kovac didn't see him as an experienced leader, but as a failed player who had been kicked from Astralis and ended up in FaZe out of desperation. Nikola was confident he could replace him in the IGL role and push for the Dane's kick. The organization didn't want to lose a superstar like Nico, so they gave in to his wishes. And so, on December 16, 2018, the world learned about karrigan's removal from FaZe. It goes without saying that after that change, FaZe dropped back to Tier 2, and Nico, when things got really bad, simply left the team to join his brother on G2. FaZe only managed to return to the top once management realized just how big a mistake it was to let go of karrigan. Shortly after Kovac left, they convinced the Dane to return. But this time, he wasn't a weak asset discarded by Astralis. He was an undisputed leader. The seventh story in our video is among the most dramatic in European CSGO. A team made up of 5 unremarkable players caused a global sensation and became the pride of their region, but couldn't handle the success that came their way. Meet ENCE. Of these 5 Finns, only Alu had any real experience in top European Counter-Strike, while the rest of the players had spent their entire careers in regional teams. The ENCE organization had tried more than once to assemble a Finnish super team that could put their country on the global stage, and this time, it was finally a success. In 2018, the Finnish lineup, which no one in the global community took seriously, suddenly started posting impressive results. They began defeating powerful Tier 1 teams more and more often, and by March 2019, they had even reached the major final. It was a global phenomenon. The world cheered for ENCE, much like they do for today's The Mongols, because they weren't experienced stars, but ordinary grinders who devoted every second of their lives to CS. Unfortunately, ENCE couldn't handle the pressure of such sudden success. They believed they had reached their peak and that the key to further growth wasn't hard work, but roster changes. That's when they let go of their captain, Aleksib, which to him felt like a betrayal. Fans, too, didn't approve of the org's decision to remove their leader just to make space for a stronger rifler. The team's results dropped significantly after that, and Aleksib later proved that he wasn't the problem. The story of cadiaN's kick from Heroic is one of the most complicated in our video. Usually, players prefer to stay quiet and not comment on their decisions. But in this case, many sides of the conflict didn't hold back, creating numerous contradictions. Take a look at Heroic in 2022. This is a Danish team that had just reached a major final. With each tournament, their fan base grew, and their IGL, cadiaN, had become a beloved figure. A movie could be made about his story, and everyone in the community could see that he was the heart of the team. However, in October 2023, the Dane was benched. Casper had long said that Heroic had stopped being a real team. In his opinion, the main reason for their losses was that they couldn't play together as planned. Overall, the community expected some roster changes in Heroic, but no one could have imagined that the organization would part ways with cadiaN. He was both the Opper and the IGL, and analysts couldn't even guess who the Danes would bring in to replace him. Rumor has it that the ones behind the decision were the young stars Ston and Yabi, who became superstars too quickly. They forced the organization into a choice. Either they or cadiaN had to go, and management decided in favor of them. There were so many contradictions in that story, though, that we won't even attempt to go through them here. But the fact remains, in the fall of 2023, Heroic made one of the most talked about roster changes in CS history. The 9th point in our video will be the shortest because of how simple it is. However, that doesn't change the fact that JKS's kick was one of the strangest and most confusing transfer decisions in modern CS history. Just take a look. In October 2023, G2 topped the HLTV rankings. Of course, they had their issues, but they were solid trophy contenders at almost every tournament they attended. However, just a month later, G2 announced that they were parting ways with the Australian player JKS, and the Serbian player Nexa came in his place. And if you're wondering why such a strong team suddenly decided to make a change, trust me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The more you dig into that story, the more questions you'll have. In short, fans and analysts had no complaints about the Aussie. He did his job well, and certainly wasn't holding the team back. Rumor has it that the only reason G2 kicked him was because he flew home to Australia during vacation and couldn't attend the meeting where the team decided who would be removed. But even if you accept the idea that G2 could have improved, you still wouldn't be able to explain why Nexa was signed in his place. Objectively, he wasn't any better than JKS in any way, not in stats, experience, or role. And by the way, we're not implying anything here, but Nexa was a good friend and practically a fellow countryman of Nico. After the news, the community rallied behind the Australian. Nobody could understand the logic of the transfer, and even G2 fans criticized it. It quickly became clear that Nexa couldn't handle such a high level of play and was benched after just one season with the team. So now, to finish everything off, let's talk about Jame and his removal from Virtus.pro. You probably all know Virtus.pro have been struggling for a long time. The team is constantly looking for solutions, but judging by the results, they're not always successful. Jame, who had been with the team since its founding, had long said that no one is safe from being kicked, including himself. A lot has been said about how he and Electronic never quite clicked due to different approaches to Counter-Strike, but most fans didn't expect the organization to take such a bold step as moving Jame to the bench. In a way, this decision might not seem extraordinary, but the whole region was talking about it for two reasons. First, Jame was the symbol of VP. He led this roster to victory at the Rio Major, and many fans supported Virtus.pro thanks to his personality. Second, the community had long viewed Virtus.pro somewhat negatively. Many analysts believed their management was trying to solve problems through constant roster changes, which they saw as fundamentally wrong. As a result, when Virtus.pro announced that Jame would be benched, many fans reacted very negatively. Every roster change in the team was usually a joke in the CIS community, which is why Jame's departure made it onto our list. It's worth noting, however, that many analysts had long pointed out the shortcomings of Jame's philosophy in CS2. The strategies and approaches he successfully used in CSGO were no longer as effective in the new version of the game, and many believed he simply didn't adapt to the update. Well guys, that's it. Thanks for tuning in this far, and we'd love to hear your feedback on our new format in the comments. Be sure to tell us what topic we should cover in the next list also. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the best esports content. Catch you in the next one, guys.